Hi, everyone. Christian asked me to record a short intro for this interview that I conducted in 2014 with Tom Sullivan, artist and designer, most notably for Sam Raimi's Evil Dead series. Tom had a booth at the Macabre Fair Film Festival, and I immediately made my way over to talk to him. He had original art for sale. He actually had some of the props from the films, like the Necronomicon Ex Mortis and the Kandarian Demon Dagger there. So that, of course, immediately drew my eye. He was a really nice guy. He was very self-deprecating, but I think his art and his approach to the sort of occult sort of imagery that we see in the films was exceptional. I hope you enjoyed the interview.
Okay, this is Bill Burns from Horror News Network interviewing the great Tom Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, what was your first significant encounter with horror and sci-fi?
Easily, when I was 5 years old, I saw the original King Kong, and my brother and I turned on the television at 10 a.m. one Saturday and started right up and had me hooked, and never heard of dinosaurs before. I couldn't imagine a 50-foot ape or whatever it was, and had no idea how they did it, but I was mesmerized. Interestingly, we only saw it up until the King Kong T-Rex fight, and Dad goes, "Hey guys, we gotta go to the lumberyard." "No, Dad, the coolest movie's on." And so I didn't get to finish seeing it for till next year. That's all I talked about. And my mom kept an eye out for it, and not that many giant gorilla films out at the time.
Right.
And but that got me hooked into special effects and sculpting and drawing. And but that got me started in art and interested in film and special effects and stuff, and dinosaurs, of course.
Right. Did you realize at the time that there were artists or technicians behind the inner workings of those films?
Well, just a little bit. My brother and I came up with, our 5-year-old minds how they did this. That there was King Kong was a giant suit filled with gymnasts, all grabbing arms and ankles and bending people. I was preposterous, of course, but that's as close as I thought I was looking at something really big there.
What were your first attempts at doing effects?
It was a mask company. For one Halloween, I had ape masks, and these were prosthetic glue-on things. They were just latex slush molds that you could glue on your face. I had an ape and a demon and witch noses and chin, and we even made a pinhead, like a cone head kind of thing, and a werewolf and things like that. And so, but that taught me the skills of mold making and sculpting and all that stuff. But I've always been drawing as a kid, and around age 11, I started taking it more seriously and, drawing Spider-Man and all those heroes guys.
Well, who were your early artistic influences?
Steve Ditko for Spider-Man, and then soon after that, Frank Frazetta, who's just the epitome of...
I've been to the Frazetta Museum in East Stroudsburg.
Me too. I got to meet Frank in LA.
Wow.
Spent an hour with him in his studio at home.
Wow.
And what a guy. What a guy. Oh, gosh. What amazing. Just couldn't explain the influence he's had on me.
Yeah.
Got to meet my heroes.
Yeah.
Harry Hosden and Willis O'Brien's widow, too.
Oh, wow. That's it. Wow. How did you learn your craft? How did you start, actually learning it?
Painfully shy. I noticed in the 7th grade during cafeteria hour that there was this really cool kid, Kurt Lux, who's going on to be a comedy writer. And he would draw Thor and Hulk and those guys during lunch. And I noticed there was always a group of 12 people behind him, and half of them were girls. And I thought, this is great. You can be popular enough to talk to anybody. And so I had him show me how to draw, and he showed me the wrong way. Just, the outside is a big curve, and then the knees are like commas, and then 2 bumps on the inside of the upper leg and 2 bumps on the outside, and then the foot is like a triangle. Forget anatomy and skeletons and all that stuff. But it got me started, and I just started copying stuff. And then I went to after high school, I went to my first comic convention, and Mike Kaluta, the DC
studio,
doing the Shadow at the time, was there. And I had my stuff. Mr. Kaluta, would you mind looking at my artwork and letting me know what you think? And he goes, well, do you want me to tell you like a artist talking to a fan who he wants to be friends with, or would you want to hear what an art director would tell you? And I go, well, you better tell me what the art director would say. Well, they have this blue pencil, and you hand them a drawing, and there's something wrong with it, they put a line through it. They don't tell you what's wrong with it. You better figure that out. And here's the problem, is you've got the muscles, but they're not hanging on a skeleton. And so you got to start drawing the skeleton and figure out where each muscle starts and ends and what it does, because muscles tense and they relax. And basically, in the most kindest way possible, you got to start from scratch again. And undaunted, I went out and bought every anatomy book I could and studied them and copied them, and finally got pretty close to it.
Right.
And taught myself the muscle masses and all the bone names, and a couple of times so I could forget them. But that is how you do it.
Were you also influenced by the other studio artists like Bernie Wrightson, Jeff Jones?
Oh, absolutely. All those guys in the classic N.C. Wyeth and, just the golden age of illustrators, Frank Schoonover and the classes that
Howard Pyle, right?
Howard Pyle,
yeah.
exactly, their master, yeah. And loved all that stuff, and I've got a huge art library, huge.
Wow. How did you meet Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and Rob Talbot?
Back in my married days, my wife was going to Michigan State, and I went along. I was just taking classes. I thought I should be drawing, painting, and sculpting 8 hours a day, because it's what's in your portfolio. I thought, who gives a crap what your paper says? It's what you show them, because they want to turn it into cash, you know. And so I was working on that, and I read about in the MSU paper about the MSU Creative Filmmaking Society. Sam and his brother Ivan had found that if you could rent. If you live on campus as a student, you can rent auditoriums for like $30. 300 people with a screen. And Sam would rent one of those, set up his projector, and show his Super 8 shorts, and charge like $1.50 or $2 to get in. And for a Friday night for cheap entertainment, that's not too shabby. And then we'd go over to. We met, and I had my reels of stop motion animation, and afterwards we'd go over to their place and watch more movies and things and just talk shop. And at the time, Sam was putting the finishing touches on It's Murder, a feature-length Super 8 comedy, and Bruce is in that, and I met Bruce, and really nice guy, but really shy back in those days.
Yeah.
Today you can't shut him up, but back then it was. I related to all of them, and but Sam was just gung ho, and of course he met Rob, who was going to like fish and wildlife work for the state. His dream was to count fish, and sadly, of course, he had to sacrifice that dream to become a multi-millionaire movie and television producer
and marry
Warrior Princess, make wonderful babies in New Zealand. Good for him.
How did they approach you to work on Within the Woods?
We had finished up It's Murder, and I did some sound effects. Some guy's poisoning a guy's drink. Look over there, and he drops all these pills and things in it. And I did a little flyer for it, poster art. And while they were doing sound effects for It's Murder, even though they had taken the precaution of duct taping a mattress to the wall of a neighbor who had complained about sound, when they got busted for doing sound effects at 4 in the morning and kicked out of their apartment, lost their deposit and all that. So they thought, well, that's pretty much our college careers, because the parents were really going to put up with so much, I guess. And they decided, we got to make a horror film. And back in those days, there were drive-ins everywhere that had needed a new triple feature every weekend, and so that's a huge volume of films out there. So they thought, well, if you make a horror film, you can get in. Sam had been making comedies for the most part, and so we made a short film called Within the Woods, and it was kind of like the acid test. I did the special effects on that, and it actually worked pretty good. It's a good scary one. There's no real comedy in it, and it's pretty hardcore, a little half-hour thing, and they use that to raise money. They go to groups, investment groups, doctors, lawyers, dentists, things like that, with some money to invest. And sure enough, they've made their money back many times over.
Is that one of the reasons why, because of that group of investors, is that why there's been such a hard, people have such a hard time seeing Within the Woods? I know there's been some kind of rights issues.
Yeah, there was a lot of music from unlicensed sources, and so because it's just a show piece,
Right.
but to release it, they had to changed all the sound and everything.
Okay.
And I think they had done that, and then Sam decided not to show it at the last minute.
Interesting. I know there's a lot of apocryphal stories about the Evil Dead shoot. I mean, I've heard there was injuries, drug use, near madness. Was it as rough and tumble as it's been portrayed?
Well, it was just kind of grueling. The drug use was just pot.
Okay.
So nobody got sick or died or overdosed or addicted. And I never touched it, but there was plenty of moonshine around and injuries. Well, I think they would have been minor if there were any. I don't really recall that. But the poor actresses had those contacts in their eyes that made them blind. And, Ellen's falling into a trap door. And when I saw her do that, I could have sworn she must have cracked her head, but didn't touch it. And they caught her in a basement in a blanket. And yeah, I mean, other than trying to pretend it's summer in December when you're running outside in a nightie and it's 40 degrees or whatever, that's that kind of thing. It's really uncomfortable. But it was what I recall of it, no egos, no divas, no jerks. Everybody got along, and we were all dedicated to making this work, and everybody was bringing a whole lot more than what was on the script. I was trying to, for me, on the Kandarian dagger, I had drilled, I was looking at it and go, when they stabbed Shelley, I took a drilled a hole right through it, stuck a tube in it. I said, Sam, I brought it to the set that they were shooting at. Sam, you have somebody blow some blood while it's stabbing her, and it'll be puking blood. Bingo, there it is.
That's awesome.
There's also in the Shelley makeup, and I could only see it on on Blu-ray. I gave her a split tongue, kind of a demonic thing. A little latex thing, put some peanut butter in it, stick it on your tongue. And I'd forgotten all about it. So oh, cool. And then there was also Hal Delrich had gotten into acting because he saw I Was a Teenage Werewolf with Michael Landon. And at one point I'm turning him into like a dog, and he's going, he had this epiphany. It's come full circle. I've achieved my dream.
That's awesome.
And I did a thing where I found on the way down, to Tennessee, we stopped at a restaurant and I went into the bar and found these little micro thin straws, almost like hypodermic needles, and I picked a couple of those and I turned it, you carefully melted it into an S curve and then painted it black and put that in his nostril so that the bottom half went into his mouth under the makeup that had like the dog stuff, so it puffed up his lip. So he could, when he comes back all injured, although this is before the dog makeup, but it went. He had a swollen lip because he'd been attacked by the vines, and when he comes back, he's sitting there and he's actually hemorrhaging through his nose by blowing out through the straw. Wow. Kind of a clever. It's hard to see because it's like a profile shot, but it is in there.
That's awesome.
And anyway, awesome.
Cool. What went into the design for the Book of the Dead?
Originally, Sam, in the script, the script says the book has some kind of animal skin, which I took as leather, with a few letters from an ancient alphabet. And I had seen the film called Equinox a couple of times, and that's pretty much a description of that book. And I know Sam hadn't seen that one at that time. But I said, Sam, this book is a book of evil, right? And he goes, yes, it's pure evil. And I said, then it should be something that you look at and you wouldn't really want to pick it up. And at the time, one of the most disgusting things I'd heard a human do was the story of Ilsa Koch, immortalized the she-devil.
Right,
and but she had people skinned and made curtains and lampshades and book covers. And I thought, well, if you're going to have a book cover out of skin, you need a human identification. And I wanted to put a schlong on the cover, so I put a face. And I haven't found another Book of the Dead face that precedes that.
I don't think so either.
Even Disney films, you'd think there'd be something, but not yet. And I was clever enough to copyright it. Sam didn't need to open the book. You could show people, but I'm an artist. I draw on everything, so I filled it up with 32 pages or so of artwork, and they course, showed it. More things that I'd finish all my other work and sit around the table and talk film with Josh Becker, who's a brilliant guy and director, and I would just sit there and get 5 or 6 pages done a night, and I based them on the Da Vinci notebooks and parodied them in some places. And the idea was that, ancient Sumerian Da Vinci had come up with this like cookbook. This is how you create the evil and can control it. So it's like a how-to. And in the contrast, I think the Fede Alvarez book is like the antithesis, because that's like from the imagery and the engravings and woodcuts, it's like European in origin, and it's also got references to Satan and Beelzebub, Christian mythology or whatever, and in that their book is more like the antithesis of mine. Theirs is the warning book, some Christian esoteric cult, like similar to the Knights of Templar had to battle, and this is their how you deal with that as an enemy. And then in the 20th century, it looked like some insane, obsessed guy had gotten a hold of it and scribbled all over it with more warnings. And so I think books work really well together, and also kind of expand what's at stake, because if different cultures and different times had to deal with this phenomena, humanity's in big trouble. If they ever do their Army of Darkness too, with the post-apocalyptic London filled with Deadites, that follows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like that.
That's cool. I know that your work and your effects and your artwork have a connection to H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you were a Lovecraft fan.
Before Evil Dead, I worked on a film called Cthulhu, and I did. It was going to be live action and stop motion animation and animatronics and suits. It was going to be like this epic practical effects thing, and I did a bunch of artwork and posters for it, and we got published in Starlog and Cinefantastique. And that got the ball rolling for things. And it was going to be epic. We were kind of selling it as Lovecraft meets Harryhausen. Although Ray wasn't going to work on it, we were going to use his techniques. But it was the cosmic Lovecraft. And
beautiful.
Thank you. I just got these all cleaned up. And
that would have been some movie.
And the screenwriter is put together a novel called The Sorcerer's The Alchemist's Notebook. And we're going to publish a bunch of these pictures with it. It'll be available on electronic, Nook, whatever,
Kindle, yeah,
that kind of thing. Excuse me, getting a little dry in here.
Beautiful, wow, just amazing. Oh my God, what a movie that would have been.
It would have been epic.
Oh my God.
Epic. And they got, thanks to the press, they got invited out to L.A. and met with a studio head, pitched it around. I heard they got an offer from De Laurentiis for like $150,000 or something, and turned it down, idiots. But because they wanted to make the film themselves, and they talked to another studio and gave the pitch to an executive, and she said, well, it's interesting, but I'm not sure that's for us at this point. And they go back home, and 6 months later get a bill for $500,000 from the IRS. Apparently she had greenlit the project, pocketed $3 million in starting funds, which means she's probably getting out of prison right about now.
Holy
and
God.
I could say is, welcome to Hollywood, boys.
Yeah.
What a shame. It would have been so cool. And but I have packs of prints.
Oh, it's beautiful. When you worked on Evil Dead 2, was there an understanding that your effects should be more comical, less horrific, but more comical? Was that? Because I know that was the sort of tone of the film, but was that sort of communicated to you in terms of the work you did for that film?
I was trying to just kind of maintain what I'd done in the first one. My stuff was more, it was pretty straightforward, having the ghost rush out in the beginning and having the book written and all that. I did all that opening sequence. And the comedy, I think, more came in with Bruce and Sam and the over-the-topness of it. Sam's big influence, starting out, was the Three Stooges. And if you watch Within the Woods, which is hardcore or no comedy in it. And Evil Dead, which is a dark humor, goes over the top. You kind of laugh at it, but it's not a parody or a satire. and then Evil Dead 2 about 50% funny and horror, and then Army of Darkness is pretty much like there's not really a scare in it, and it's goofy fun, and so you can kind of see Sam working back to the Three Stooges roots in it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, they're all entertaining. But the tone of each film is different, which I think is why it has such wide appeal. And of course, Army of Darkness shows up on TV most of all because it's the most PG-13 of them.
Yeah, I love that movie.
And except for the one F-bomb he drops. But so fans kind of discover the series backwards. At least at that point, now they see the Fetty film and discover it.
Right, yeah, right, absolutely.
Which is great.
What did you think about the remake?
I liked it. I scared the bejeez out of me because I went in, maybe they'll have a little bit of that Evil Dead humor in it. No, not a chuckle, a guffaw, or an inadvertent laugh, It's hardcore, and I thought that's brilliant because it's kind of like a bait and switch kind of thing. You go in and you're getting the hardcore stuff, and I like the story. I like their book, and I like that. To me, it's a sequel. It's different kids, different book from a different culture that had to deal with this stuff, and so things just are a little different in it. And I heard a plan that they might do a sequel to that one and an Army of Darkness 2 and a third film that would combine them both.
That'd be great.
Well, I don't know if that's going to happen. There's all this internet buzz about that because of various statements people have made. But I think that would be epic. The Fede film did twice as good as they expected, so who knows?
Awesome. What was it like working on Fly 2?
The Fly 2 was like my college course in makeup. I worked for the Chris Wallace studios, and I got to work with guys who worked at ILM when they weren't there. They were over at ILM doing things. And I learned how to do things the professional way and all that. And those were like 12-hour days there. And, but it was a gas. It was amazing.
Did you study the effects work that happened on the Cronenberg film?
Yes, because Chris, of course, got the Oscar for that, Steve DeCue, and who's a masterful makeup artist. And so I'm in like geek heaven there, because I was working with a guy named Don Bees who works at ILM and got us a tour of their warehouse where the art and the maquettes and
oh my God.
The robots and all the stuff were just racks and 40-foot ceilings and everything, and it was just amazing and a really good crew, nice folks. And but that was Evil Dead. I'm like pulling things out of getting most of my supplies from hardwares or supermarkets, and Fly 2 was the real thing. This is the grown-up movie.
Tell me about The Dread.
The Dread, a nice little film that I started acting in. I'd done some theater, because I taught myself all this stuff early on because I wanted to be an Uber director. And I thought if I can do all the artwork, I can have storyboards, production designs, design everything for it. And even do maquettes and sculpts. So if I went in for a project, I'd have like all the work done and hopefully get funding easier that way. So I also done writing, and I wanted to learn how to act, what actors need and how to get the feel of it so I could understand and have the same language and everything. And so I did lots of community theater. At one point I was Frankenstein's creature for an outdoor thing, and that was a lot of fun. And fortunately I had a car accident in the final weekend, which I didn't get to end the show. The director put on green paint and read from the script, unfortunately. Oh, that was terrible.
Is that something you want to continue to do, to act? Is that something you'd like to explore?
Yes. And so when The Dread came up, and my friend Alan Sandweiss was cast in it as well as a doctor, and we had a scene together, and it was a lot of fun. It's now out on Netflix, I guess. And got to get a copy of that, actually.
Cool. What is this documentary called Invaluable about?
It's about me and my career, as well as the unsung heroes of Evil Dead. So we're hoping the fans will love this. We've got interviews with the ladies and lots of Bruce and Don Campbell, his brother, who was there on the set, and many others. And we'll have like 5 hours of bonus materials and stuff. And we don't have a distributor yet. We may distribute it ourselves. But we don't really have a release date, but we're trying as soon as we possibly can. And It covers my career in film and artwork and personal stuff and all that.
Kind of like the Frazetta Painting for Fire. The Frazetta film? Yeah.
Yes, it's brilliant documentary.
Yeah.
And yes, it's like that, but probably even more entertaining because we get a lot of clowns in there.
Are you surprised that there's still so much interest in Evil Dead?
It's blown my mind. I remember a conversation we had in the house, in the kitchen, where we were filming Evil Dead, or the house that we lived in while we were filming Evil Dead, and we kind of figured, if this plays in a drive-in in Texas for one weekend, we're on the game board. We can say we made a theatrical film. So the success it's had, which I attribute to Sam. I mean, he made us all look good, and who could have guessed? I'll never win the lottery because I used my luck up on Evil Dead. And here this little film, and 30-some years later, and I'm on Long Island at a film festival, and got a summer full of conventions coming up, and it just gets bigger all the time. It's the freakiest thing. Go figure.
Well, thank you so much for things. Thank you so much, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Bill.